President Trump appears to be fighting a war on multiple fronts. Now, there is the, of course, war on the press or the lying fake news media. You also have a war on facts and a war on intelligence, literally. But he is also engaged in a war on some of the investigations into him, naturally. Now, apparently Trump has attacked anyone involved in any of these investigations, which of course begs the question of, does any of this constitute obstruction of justice? Now again, if you try to stop an investigation in the middle of the investigation by doing certain things, well, that would interfere with that investigation, and yes, that should be considered obstruction of justice, right? But of course, it's a little bit more complicated than that, and it kind of depends on the context. So let's look at that, right? So now on Monday, earlier this week, the New York Times documented some of the attacks and documented some of the ways that he might have actually done obstruction of justice. Now, some of them, or I should say most of them, we knew. A couple of them we didn't, right? And what was recently, found out could provide the basis, I think, for obstruction of justice charges against the President of the United States. Now, that kind of tells me that the context here is pretty unfavorable to the President. So I want to give you some of the takeaways from that report. Now, one of the big ones is how Trump had pressured Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to install a loyalist to oversee an investigation into Trump. Now, this is not a federal investigation into Trump. There's more than just a Mueller investigation, which, of course, I'm going to tell you that I'm worried about later on. This is the investigation that's going into Trump's businesses, the organization, in the Southern District of New York. Now, the Times reported that after installing Whitaker as the acting attorney general, Trump asked him to do something that is a bit untoward, right? Apparently, he wanted Whitaker to put in an appointee named Geoffrey Berman. Now, Berman would have been in charge of the investigation into Trump and the campaign at the Southern District of New York. So now, Berman is, what experience does Berman have? Not necessarily a whole lot, as far as, I think, investigations go. More importantly, his qualification is the fact that he is a political operative. He is someone who is a Trump loyalist. And so this was basically an attempt to try to stymie that investigation. Now, the thing is that Berman wasn't able to do this because he was recused for the case. And Whitaker refused to appoint him. Now, according to the article, the president soon soured on Mr. Whitaker, as he often does with his aides, and complained about his inability to pull levers at the Justice Department that could make the president's many legal problems go away. So that's the gist of it. I want my problems to go away. Here, you do this, you do that. I'm going to put this guy here. Well, now Whitaker, interestingly enough, in a hearing, described part of his role at the Justice Department as being the guy who's supposed to, quote, jump on grenades for the president. Now, again, that in itself, wanting to put a political appointee to oversee an investigation, and this appointee had literally recused himself from that investigation, which is interesting, is a bit of a red flag. And then, of course, getting mad at the person for not being able to appoint that other person. Fascinating. Now, of course, as far as Trump is concerned, he doesn't care. Again, he soured on Whitaker after that, because this is how he works. He demands that you do something. Sometimes it's illegal, sometimes it's not, or sometimes it's just literally impossible to do, right? And so if you end up not being able to do it for any of those reasons or any reason at all, he gets angry at you and storms off like a baby. Sad. Now, there's more. Now, one of Mr. Trump's lawyers also reached out that summer to the attorneys for two of his former aides. Now, what's interesting about that is that he was dangling pardons. Now, this is a possible pardon for Manafort and Flynn. Now, the discussions raised questions, according to the New York Times, about whether the president was willing to offer pardons to influence their decisions about whether to plead guilty and cooperate with the Mueller investigation. Now, many experts believe that using the possibility of a pardon to silence a witness could be seen as obstruction of justice. No kidding. I think that's about the most obvious thing. But again, it's legal, or I'm not saying that that's legal. I'm saying that this is obviously stuff that they have to consider from a legal perspective. And so I'm not a lawyer, right? I didn't go to law school, but to me it seems plain, but maybe there's a different bar. Maybe it's a higher bar. So that is what I have to say about that. But now, not only that, but right, you've got more. You also have the admission of firing Comey. That's something that we already knew. The reason he fired Comey is to get rid of the so-called Russia thing, right? And then, of course, there's the alleged firing of Michael Flynn. Now, it turns out Trump lied about that. Trump lied about asking for Flynn's resignation over the revelation, of course, that Flynn had lied, even to Mike Pence, about his contacts with the Russian ambassador. According to Chris Christie, the president said, quote, "The Russia thing is all over now because I fired Flynn." He had to lie about it. And then say, "Oh, no, I got rid of Flynn," which you didn't. Now the Russia thing, it's going to go away. No! Look, firing Flynn, firing Comey, especially firing Comey, is what led to the special counsel being appointed in the first place. Now, the thing about that is, of course, now, I'm actually worried about the Mueller investigation. I don't think it's going to be enough. I think maybe there's a good chance that it was too limited in scope, that it didn't look at possible money laundering or anything that could provide any foreign entity that would allow that entity to have some sort of influence or leverage over President Trump. I think Donald Trump has a lot of debts. Since his dad died, his daddy has not been able to bail him out. He got that inheritance. Who knew how much he blew through by being an absolute moron? He's tried to borrow money from so many different places. No American bank will loan him any money anymore. So where would he go? He'd go to Deutsche Bank, and he would go possibly to the Russians in order to borrow money. So look, if he owes money, and that, by the way, we haven't seen his tax returns, and look, we don't know what's in his bank account. Look, if there's money that is owed to the Russian government, we might actually, it would really be important that we know about this, that we know that this could be a possible way, these debts, for another country, another nation, to have leverage over Trump. I think that's super important to know. And I think the Mueller investigation might end up being too limited to even see that. So that's my concern. So that they find, oh, well, no collusion, right? All we were doing was looking at collusion. We didn't find any collusion. But you're not going to unless you look at the entire financial picture. That huge financial picture here would explain a lot of weird things with President Trump, including him meeting with Vladimir Putin without any sort of American officials, just with the Russian translator. That's weird. That stuff's shady. Okay. So I'm incredibly worried that this is going to be such a big letdown for a lot of people and not enough to remove Trump from office. Because again, look, there's a good chance that there will be no indictments against the president. He's a sitting president. And you would have to rely on the Republicans to impeach him, to, give the Democrats enough votes for an impeachment. And I just don't see that happening. I don't see Republicans going against Donald Trump and removing him. So I think this is going to be, this is going to be a thing where Trump is going to continue into 2020. And we have to be able to beat him in the ballot box, to beat him in the polls. And I think Bernie Sanders is the best choice to be able to do so. Because again, I don't think this Mueller thing, I don't think the impeachment, I don't think they're going to use the 25th. They should. They absolutely should. At least start looking at doing those things. But again, knowing Republicans, I don't see that happening. So, look, we're going to have to see, obviously, Another piece of information is, of course, you had Trump, who's completely, totally, says he's completely, totally innocent, right? He's attacked the investigation, Mueller and the Russia investigation, over 1,100 times in public. Yeah. So innocent people don't do that. I'm just worried that Mueller is not going to go far enough and get the information that we really need to make it, to make anything stick. So, but again, we'll have to see. But I am becoming more and more concerned that this just will not be enough. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.